the fourth patch of changes for the rebalancing project of 2024 is here. Originally they had teased that this one will focus on the Warsons 1 to 3, which they still did, but they also have added slight changes to other 4 spawns, which I'm happy to see. So let's look at the changes. First off, the Oron Monhe hideout, which is part of the Dark Trials quest, getting increased density of monsters, supposedly. I personally couldn't tell a difference whatsoever. I admit I've barely been in this area before, but I have gone sometimes and it was just like I remembered. Maybe just a few more fury towards the far left side, but the top floor with the Minotaurs looks empty and the underground looks the same, so no meaningful changes in this spawn. Next up, Fury Hell, better known as the Fury Gates, also gets increased density. This is one I actually believe to be quite an interesting change, but I couldn't check for myself the density improvements because this spawn is part of a world change event, which means it's not always available, and when it is, it also can be on any city, so you have to check individually each of them to find it, and those are massive issues with making the spawn viable, and that should have been addressed first. But as for the spawn itself, I was in fact doing a check earlier today for the Nemesis boss Furiosa, and running through I felt like the density already had some potential, especially with the last changes of the Hellfire Fighters XP, so I thought it might be worth trying again. I already tried it once a long time ago and it wasn't good, but now I will have to try one more time and see for myself. Next up is Upper Rushal with added density, and oh boy, you can clearly see the change right away as soon as you enter the northern area, and I'm extremely happy with this change. I think perhaps it might even be the new high level paladin spawn, but I'm not a high level paladin, so I wouldn't know for certain. What I do know is that a long time ago I tried to come up with a lab that would turn Upper Rushal huntable in a similar style to the middle area, with doing big lures and hiding behind 3 walls for the druid, and I wasn't able to make it work because there wasn't enough density and creatures were too far apart, but that won't be an issue now, and I am actually looking forward to test this spawn properly. Next up is the Secret's Ground, which is located in the northwest of Oron and is getting increased monster density. And the change of the earth sensitivity for the young sea serpents is rather odd. It doesn't offer any benefits as they are by far weaker than the regular sea serpent or secrets, and it would have been better if it was for the secrets instead, as they are actually strong to all elements at the moment. Next up, they are tweaking the dynamic event of the spawn. For those unaware, this whole area is massive in size, like a lot bigger than the Oron dungeon, but is heavily ignored as most of the sections are locked behind quests that most people don't bother to do since none of the spawns are good. But on top of that, there was one dynamic that if you kill 3000 secret serpents, then it will trigger a change in the spawn that will turn the regular quarters into renegade versions of themselves, which hit harder and give more experience. I personally never interacted with them, so I thought it only applied to the regular quarters in the middle area, but coming now to check ended up being that all the creatures were turned into renegade quarters, and if that is a new thing, then I can see it being a good change. But in reality, the only people that truly bothered with doing this were bestiary completionists, since the renegade quarters had their own bestiary entry, and this change, although it's better now since the creatures will be swapping every 2000 kills, it should have been different to begin with, since there is more quarters needed for bestiary. It would have been better to make it 1000 kills on the secrets and 3000 on the quarters for the swap to take place. But I think a better idea would have been introducing the dynamic of the spawn into the voting topics for the Raftalo Magistrate, and then have the creatures be either secrets or renegade quarters based off the winning points, for 1 or 2 week duration, just like the Oron dungeon rotation. That would have made it more appealing if the numbers were good, but for now I expect it to remain ignored by the regular players. Now with that, we move on to the changes for the Warsons. Starting with the Warson 1. Increasing the experience on the boss goes along with the changes they've been introducing of making bosses give more experience, which I agree with, but this boss in particular tends to be done with a big group of people for the daily runs, and during those there is always some that are doing the minimum participation, and perhaps this change will get more people to join in on attacking the boss for some XP. Although with the vast group of people that do these bosses, I think the change won't be noticeable, and it should be increased further. There is absolutely no harm on doing so, because the bosses have big heals that wouldn't allow small groups to kill them. As for the spawn, adding 2 different passages connecting the cave throughout the northern area. They do help with making a rotation, but more importantly also make the way to the boss access easier, which both are good. The spawn already has good enough density, so I understand not adding more spawn, but it also has not been properly tested, and I don't know if the spawn rate is slow or fast. For the creatures, they are reducing most of their abilities, but it's hard to judge how meaningful it is. For example, the reduction of invisibility of some of the creatures is a nice addition because it was too often, but if they continue to do it, it's hard to notice how they affect a hunt. Reducing the changes of getting you drunk are not relevant because you still have to use the Waron ring. I actually ran in without a ring to see how long it would take, and within 2 seconds I was already drunk. But making them all weaker to the same element, in this case fire damage, does make it better to hunt, now with a clear element to use for them. Lastly, the mana drain of the Armadillo might be the most meaningful change, as the mana drain in this spawn fell insanely high, and if it mostly came from the Armadillo, then it's a great change. And seeing how some creatures got experience buffed and the density of the spawn was already decent, then this one is looking promising now. Next up, Warson II. Once again, XP increase for the boss, same logic as before. Additionally, rather than creating passages in the spawn, they are adding a teleport that takes you back to the start, which I was afraid would be confusing for people and end up on going back to the start instead of the boss. But the location is apart from the TP to the boss, so it shouldn't be an issue. The change of the Infected Weeper makes it so that it gets healed with fire damage and prevents the chance of somebody killing it by mistake or intentionally to troll the access to the boss, and that is a highly welcome addition. As for the other creatures, they are getting weaker to ice, to make it the clear element to use in the spawn. Also, creatures will do less mana drain, which I'm very happy with, and their invisibility in some cases got removed and in others decreased. But also, some of their debuffs, like on skills or speed, are also getting reduced, which makes it more likely to be huntable in general. We'll have to try out and see. I do find it weird that only 2 creatures got their experience buff. I feel like all of them should be getting some more XP. But moving on with Warson III, just like the previous, added XP to the boss and a teleport to reset the lab. First off, I think it's a mistake that they gave the same amount of experience to each boss, as they are not of the same difficulty, and in the case of Warson III, you do need more people to kill it than the Warson 1. And unfortunately, I think this spawn was lacking heavily in density, and the teleport alone might not be enough, because I think overkilling the spawn will be quite easy. And it's unfortunate because by looking at the experience changes, this one will seem to be the most promising, but at the same time, these creatures are far too strong in damage and HP, so they take long to kill, and the lack of density makes it so that you struggle to make 8 boxes in some parts. I was gonna try to do some pulls on my own, and I ended up nearly dying trying this out, because they clearly have too much HP and their mana drain is still an issue. So overall, I think this one will be the worst out of the Warsons, but until I try them myself with a druid, I can't say yet if any of them is good enough for hunting. Lastly, they will be releasing the next patch in 3 weeks instead of 2, which once again I'm disappointed at. I already said in the previous video that by then revisiting the Ferumbra's Ascension and only doing so little spawns at a time, then it was looking like we wouldn't get all the spawns from the list reworked, and now with this, we will likely have 2 final patches and that will be all, which is unfortunate because we have been getting some good changes. It's just that the frequency is so slow in my opinion. Hopefully they at least consider doing more of this more often across the year, and then it will be a clear win for the community. But that's all we got for now. If you like the content, consider subscribing. Thank you for watching, and a special thanks to the Guild Causality from Pulsera, to Night Star and Tuna Hero for supporting the channel.